In 1952, Florence Chadwick, a 34-year-old long-distance swimmer, attempted to be the first woman to swim from Catalina Island to the California coast. She had already been the first woman to successfully swim the English Channel, both directions. As the hours ticked off during her Catalina swim, she fought bone-chilling cold and dense fog. The icy water numbed her to the point of exhaustion. Straining to make out the shore through her swimmer's goggles, she could see only dense fog. She knew she could not go any farther. Although not a quitter, after 16 hours she shouted to her trainer to take her out of the water. They urged her not to give up, but to no avail. Frozen to the bone, her spirit defeated, she was devastated even more when she discovered that she was only about 2,000 feet from shore. She suddenly felt the shock of failure. She told a reporter, "But if I could have seen land, I know I could have made it." She had been licked not by fatigue or even by cold. The fog alone had defeated her because it had obscured her goal. It had blinded her reason, her eyes, and most of all, her heart. 2 months later, she swam that same channel, and again fog clouded her vision. But this time, determined, she swam with her faith intact, her faith that somewhere beyond that fog there was land. This time she succeeded. Not only did she become the first woman to swim the Catalina Channel, but she beat the men's record by 2 hours. Florence was, as described in today's gospel, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. What she didn't realize is that she was losing her faith in achieving her goal. Jesus says in the gospel, "People will die of fright." What he is saying is what FDR once said, "There is nothing to fear but fear itself." What Jesus wants to offer us is not fear but hope in his love. The readings today offer tremendous hope in God's love by talking about both the first and second coming of Jesus. It is appropriate that this subject be discussed today because it's the first day of the new liturgical year, the Church's equivalent of January 1st. And, appropriately, it is also the first day of Advent, which comes from the Latin adventus, meaning coming. So, like any New Year's resolution, the readings today address where we came from and where we are going. All the readings form a coherent, chronological progression of hope in and toward God. The first reading predicts Jesus' first coming when it says, "I will raise up for David a just shoot." In the second reading, Paul passes on from Jesus' first coming how you should conduct yourself to please God. But then we are hit on the head with the gospel, which deals with the second coming of Jesus. It appears to give a dark foreboding of calamitous things to come. Yet the message is not just of disaster, but one of hope. As Christians, we always have hope of Christ coming to help us in the end. But why is the language so harsh? One reason is that the early Christians believed the second coming would happen during their lifetime, and they knew that things were already pretty bad since they were being martyred. This series of readings forms not an end goal, but a process toward God. Those in industry may remember when management theory suggested that quality was the end goal. Only later did it become apparent that our guard against defects couldn't be let down at any time. So then quality was redefined as continuing process, not just an end goal. The gospel seems analogous to this paradigm shift in thinking. Perhaps the events we observe in the world today, like global terrorism and recession, are part of a continuing process leading up to the second coming. Though not imposed by God, these terrible events can be sources of redemptive cleansing. For example, Ponzi schemes are only ferreted out during a recession. As long as the economy is growing, they can continue unnoticed. But where did the process start and where will it end? In last Sunday's readings, God said, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the one who is, and who was, and is to come, the Almighty." The Alpha is when God conceived of man and his individual consciousness before the creation of the universe, billions of years ago. The scientific anthropic principle reinforces this when it notes that there is an unlikely and strangely fine-tuned balance between the forces of nature, such that at the beginning of the universe, God had already planned for life, and hence our existence. But where is the Omega point, or the second coming? As Catholics, we believe in non-duality. That is, the body and soul are interstitial. They are meant for each other. So we can look to the physical world of evolution for hints of the direction of the process toward the Omega point. In 1996, the Pope said that scientific knowledge has led us to recognize that the theory of evolution is more than just an hypothesis. The Omega point is what we Christians believe to be the highest level of our journey. Father Teilhard de Chardin, a paleontologist and Jesuit theologian, was the first to describe it in terms of a unified theory of evolution and spirituality, the body and the soul. Chardin's concept was that we would approach the divine in union, but never become divine. An analogy would be the need we have for spectacles to see. Previously, genes of bad eyesight would not be passed on because the person would not see the tiger coming to eat them. Now, we fool evolution with glasses, so our brain must continue to evolve larger and more powerful to compensate for the trickery we have imposed. Science now knows that in a way Chardin was right. The youngest part of our brain, its moral compass in the frontal lobes, can, through the neuroplasticity of meditative prayer, grow more efficient. Teilhard essentially had a unified theory of Christocentric evolution, namely that the warmth of God's love is always drawing us to himself. But these ideas can just sound esoteric unless they have application in the daily lives of our journey to the Omega point, to Jesus' second coming. The answer is genuine, hope-filled faith and brain-changing prayer, which are mutually reinforcing. So we hear a person say, "Repent, the end is near." This is a misguided attempt at playing God by claiming to know when God will come. Isn't it far wiser to do as today's gospel says and just be vigilant at all times during the process of our journey? Do we still have hope in God's love for us when we see the terrorist attacks in Paris, Mali, or elsewhere? Can we hope to look past everyday family feuding and love our parents and our children? Is there hope after a divorce? Is there hope for our alcoholic family member? Are we ready to acknowledge that God's love cradles us unceasingly? In other words, will the fog of life's problems discourage us, or do we believe, like Florence Chadwick, in what French Nobel Prize winner André Gide once said, "Man cannot discover new oceans unless he has the courage to lose sight of the shore"?